Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to identify the people who are up here with me. To my immediate left is William M. McSwain, who's the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. To his left is Lieutenant Brad Getz of the Fogelsville Station. He's the commander of the Fogelsville Station, Pennsylvania State Police, Troop M, Bethlehem. To his left is Louis Tallarico, Chief County Detective, who is in charge of the Homicide Task Force. And to his left is Coroner Scott Grimm, Lehigh County Coroner. To my right, my immediate right, is Lieutenant Craig Rodriguez, who's the commander of the Criminal Investigations Section of Pennsylvania State Police Troop M, Bethlehem. And to his right is Chief Glenn Dorney of the South Whitehall Township Police Department. On Saturday, July 28, 2018, at approximately 5:44 p.m., a South Whitehall Township police officer responded to an area in the northbound lanes of Hamilton Boulevard, Route 222, near the Comfort Suites Hotel. The officer had been controlling or monitoring traffic at the intersection of Lincoln Avenue and Hamilton Boulevard, which is about 1.5 blocks south of where the incident took place. Officer had his marked vehicle parked on the median dividing the north and southbound lanes of Hamilton Boulevard. While there, a woman operating a vehicle pulled alongside his passenger side door and reported in what I described, based on the video, as an hysterical or frantic manner, that a man had approached and tried to enter her vehicle while she was driving along Hamilton Boulevard, north, closer to the city, of the officer's location. The officer made a U-turn, proceeded north until he encountered a man on the east berm of Hamilton Boulevard. The man was bleeding. He banged on the officer's driver's side window, mounted the hood of the police vehicle, and banged on the windshield. And when he removed himself from the hood of the vehicle, went to the passenger side and banged on that window. The officer radioed Lehigh County Communications Center to report the incident in progress, and with his duty weapon unholstered, and while pointing it at the man, issued repeated verbal commands to him from within the police vehicle. He commanded him to get away from his vehicle, to get off of his vehicle. He had also indicated to the comm center that the man might have mental issues and that he needed backup and would await backup's arrival. The man walked away from the passenger side of the officer's vehicle in a southbound direction toward Lincoln Avenue on the east berm. He walked a short distance south, estimated by the officer to be less than 100 feet, and then reversed course and walked back toward the marked vehicle. By that time, the officer had alighted from the vehicle and was issuing repeated verbal commands to the man to get down on the ground. The man did not comply, but continued to walk toward the officer. As the man drew nearer, the officer discharged his duty weapon 5 times. The officer radioed shots fired and requested an ambulance. His backup arrived and CPR was begun. The man was transported to Lehigh Valley Hospital, Cedar Crest, where he was pronounced dead. Lehigh County Coroner Scott Grimm has ruled the cause of death to have been multiple gunshot wounds and the manner to have been homicide, death at the hands of another. I received a call from Chief Glenn Dorney of the South Whitehall Township Police Department shortly after this incident occurred. At that time, Chief Dorney and I discussed the investigation, and he was in agreement with my suggestion that we request the assistance of the Pennsylvania State Police and the Lehigh County Homicide Task Force to conduct the investigation into this officer-involved shooting. The deceased has since been identified as Joseph Santos of 64 Hohen Street, Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey. Mr. Santos was born May 25, 1974, and was 44 years of age. I offer my sincere condolences to the family of Mr. Santos. The South Whitehall police officer who fired upon Mr. Santos is Officer Jonathan R. Rosselli. whose date of birth is April 12, 1985. At this time, I am announcing that Officer Rosselli has been charged with the crime of voluntary manslaughter as a result of the shooting and killing of Mr. Santos. Because it's important, I'm going to spend more time discussing the law than I ordinarily would at this kind of a press conference. But under the law, a person who kills an individual without lawful justification commits voluntary manslaughter if at the time of the killing he is acting under a sudden and intense passion resulting from serious provocation by the individual killed, or if at the time of the killing he believes the circumstances to be such that if they existed would justify the killing, but his belief is unreasonable. And that is really the basis for bringing this charge today. Voluntary manslaughter is a felony of the first degree. The maximum statutory sentence for that is a term of imprisonment of not more than 20 years. If there were to be a finding of guilt, the sentencing judge would have to consider the Pennsylvania sentencing guidelines in the imposition of sentence. In this case, the Commonwealth will have the burden of proving three elements. First, that Joseph Santos is dead. Second, that Jonathan R. Rosselli killed him. And third, that Rosselli had the intent to kill. Because of the intense public interest in this matter, I'm going to explain, as I said, in greater detail. Section 508 of the Pennsylvania Crimes Code governs use of force in law enforcement. In pertinent part, it provides as follows. A peace officer need not retreat or desist from efforts to make a lawful arrest because of resistance or threatened resistance to the arrest. He is justified in the use of any force which he believes to be necessary to effect the arrest and any force which he believes to be necessary to defend himself or another from bodily harm while making the arrest. However, he is justified in using deadly force only when he believes that such force is necessary to prevent death or serious bodily injury to himself or such other person, or when he believes both that such force is necessary to prevent the arrest from being defeated by resistance or escape, and two, the person to be arrested has committed or attempted a forcible felony or is attempting to escape and possesses a deadly weapon or otherwise indicates that he will endanger human life or inflict serious bodily injury unless arrested without delay. In this case, there is no evidence that Mr. Santos was armed with any weapon and no evidence that he had committed or attempted a forcible felony. I have approved the charge of voluntary manslaughter rather than murder of the third degree because murder requires malice. And although malice may be inferred from the use of a deadly weapon on a vital part of the human body, there can be no malice when certain reducing circumstances are present. When those circumstances are present, a killing may be voluntary manslaughter, but never murder. This is true when a defendant kills either in the heat of passion, following serious provocation, or kills under an unreasonable, mistaken belief in justifying circumstances. Again, the case here, in my opinion, is that Officer Rosselli killed under an unreasonable, mistaken belief that he was justified in doing so. Pennsylvania case law has addressed the issue of reasonable belief that deadly force is necessary to prevent death or serious bodily injury as follows, and I've cited some cases in the release which you'll get a copy of. But basically they hold that the requirement that a defendant have a reasonable belief that he is in imminent danger as the basis for a claim of self-defense encompasses two aspects, one subjective and one objective. First, the defendant must have acted out of an honest, bona fide belief that he was in imminent danger, which involves consideration of the defendant's subjective state of mind. Second, the defendant's belief that he needed to defend himself with deadly force, if it existed, must be reasonable in light of the facts as they appear to the defendant, a consideration that involves an objective standard or an objective analysis. Applying those to the facts of this case, I'm satisfied, as I've said, that subjectively, Officer Roselli acted out of an honest, bona fide belief that he was in some imminent danger. However, an objective analysis of the facts does not establish that Officer Roselli's belief that he needed to defend himself with deadly force was reasonable, and hence it was not justified. I've talked about the circumstances when Officer Roselli was first approached by the hysterical and frantic woman. I will say that during the course of this investigation, interviews were conducted with 11 people who either had some interaction with Mr. Santos themselves or observed his interaction with other vehicles on Hamilton Boulevard prior to the encounter with Officer Roselli. However, Officer Roselli knew of only one instance that was reported to him by the woman who drove up alongside of him. And as I stated, when Officer Roselli encountered Mr. Santos, there was the whole deal at the police vehicle, which clearly is somewhat bizarre behavior. So that given those state of mind, those facts, I'm satisfied that the officer's subjective state of mind could reasonably have been that Mr. Santos was a danger to himself or to others, and that he, Roselli, might have been in danger of some injury through the acts of Santos. However, Mr. Santos then walked away from the police vehicle, and when he reversed course, he came towards Officer Roselli. He was walking. He was not running or rushing toward the officer. He did not have anything visible in his hands. He was not clenching his fist. He did not present a threatening posture. He was plainly not armed with any type of weapon. He was in fact dressed in a t-shirt and shorts and had socks on his feet, no shoes. And he is heard on the video saying to Officer Roselli, who had his weapon unholstered and pointing at him, "Don't do it." While it is true that Mr. Santos failed to comply with the officer's legitimate demands to get down on the ground, there is no objective showing that Officer Roselli was in danger of imminent serious bodily injury or death. Further, Mr. Santos had not, to the officer's knowledge, attempted any forcible felony, nor was he attempting to escape while in the possession of a deadly weapon. He had no weapon. In the immediate aftermath of the incident, as set forth in the affidavit of probable cause, Officer Roselli stated to the first responding officer that he thought, quote, "He fucked up," close quote. And he didn't know what to do because Santos kept coming at him. He also told his shift supervisor at the scene he thought he, quote, "fucked up," close quote, and said that one more time at the scene. Although not necessary to the making of an objective decision, Officer Roselli had the option to engage Mr. Santos physically, and in addition to his firearm, he was also equipped with an ASP expandable baton, OC pepper spray, and a taser. During the course of this investigation, those items were examined and found to be functional. Officer Roselli has surrendered earlier this afternoon. He is represented by attorneys Emmanuel Capelson and Gavin Hollahan, both of Allentown. The officer was interviewed by investigators on Wednesday, August 1, in the presence of those attorneys. Officer Roselli will be preliminarily arraigned from central booking. That is likely going on as we speak. A magisterial district judge, however, is not permitted to set bail where the charge is voluntary manslaughter. However, the Commonwealth will not object to reasonable ROR bail inasmuch as Officer Roselli is not considered to be a flight risk. He will be supervised by pretrial services, and a judge of the Court of Common Pleas will set bail and any appropriate non-monetary conditions. This case has understandably received a great deal of media attention and public interest. To those who believe or contend that the death of Mr. Santos was either the result of police brutality or that racism was involved, this investigation has disclosed no facts which would support those contentions. In my opinion, this was the act of a relatively inexperienced officer who held a subjective fear for his own safety, but made a decision which objectively was unreasonable in light of the facts as they existed and appeared at the time he discharged his weapon and killed Mr. Santos. Officer Rosselli was a graduate of the Allentown Police Academy. He graduated on December 17, 2017. He thereafter underwent 13 weeks of field training in accordance with South Whitehall Township Police Department protocols. However, he has been on patrol by himself for less than 5 months prior to this incident. Public should also know that Officer Rosselli honorably served in the United States Army, including a tour in Afghanistan, and he is currently in the National Guard, holding the rank of Major. As I arrived at the scene and as some limited facts were becoming known, Lieutenant Rodriguez, Chief Dorney, and I appeared briefly in an impromptu press conference with the assembled media on the parking lot of the Comfort Suites Hotel. At the outset of that conference, I made clear that there were very few facts that were then known. However, when I was describing the event, I used the phrase, quote, "The officer had to discharge his weapon," close quote. That was obviously, at that stage of the investigation, a poor, very poor choice of phrasing. But it was exactly that. It did not and does not indicate that I had a bias in examining the facts or reviewing the investigation or making a charging decision. It is clearly obvious at this point that I have reached an opposite conclusion. In charging Officer Rosselli, I have concluded that he did not have to discharge his weapon. Of course, since that evening, I have had the benefit and the opportunity of learning many more facts and reviewing the audio and video recordings from the dash cam camera and the body cam worn by Officer Rosselli. Those videos had to be downloaded and were first made available to me and the investigators last Monday. Although I would prefer to show the videos to the media and to the public today, they are now evidence in a criminal case, and I am ethically bound not to show them outside of court. They will be introduced as evidence in the case. They will be key evidence in the case, and you will have the opportunity to see and report on their content as the case progresses through the court. Right to know request or Act 22 of 2017 request will necessarily be denied as protected from disclosure as investigative and as evidence until this case is concluded. Finally, I wish to commend and to thank the Pennsylvania State Police Troop M Bethlehem, the Fogelsville Station of Troop M, Trooper Thomas Rummerfield, Lehigh County Homicide Task Force, and Detective James Bruchak for conducting a very thorough investigation. I want to inform you and the public that this investigation is ongoing. We do not at this time have a written autopsy report, nor do we have the results of toxicology testing of Mr. Santos conducted as part of the autopsy. That is not a criticism, it's just a fact. Those reports take time to generate. Toxicology results take time always in these kinds of cases or in any homicide case. So neither of those things, in my judgment, is necessary to this determination. However, it may be that some further explanation regarding Mr. Santos's actions will become known as those results come forward. As in every criminal case, the fact that an arrest has occurred or a complaint has been filed is merely an accusation, and the defendant, Jonathan R. Rosselli, is presumed innocent until and unless proven guilty. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, William McSwain.
Thank you, District Attorney Martin. I am Bill McSwain, the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, which covers the 9-county area of southeastern Pennsylvania, including Lehigh County. I am here today for 2 reasons. First, I want to be transparent with the public that this is a case that the federal government cares about because we have an interest in safeguarding the civil rights of all citizens. Accordingly, my office has been in close contact with the local authorities from the time of the incident to the present. My office is independent from Lehigh County District Attorney's office, obviously, but we can share information with each other and provide assistance and support to one another where appropriate, without compromising that independence. And second, I am here to show my support for District Attorney Martin. He has a difficult job to do here, and he is the right person to do it. He has a tremendous amount of experience, having served as the District Attorney for 20 years, as a prosecutor for 27 years, and as a trial attorney for 45 years. He is widely respected by the law enforcement community, by the legal community, and by the public in general. He has earned that respect over a lifetime of public service. And he has a deep respect and appreciation for law enforcement, as I do. I know that the decision that he has made here today is not something that he takes lightly. Finally, I want to commend the authorities who quickly responded to the scene and the authorities who are investigating this matter, in particular the Pennsylvania State Police, the Lehigh County Homicide Task Force, and of course, the Lehigh County District Attorney's Office and the District Attorney. The U.S. Attorney's Office has been in constant contact with state and local authorities about this investigation and will continue to follow it as it proceeds through the criminal justice system. My office is committed to providing District Attorney Martin, the Pennsylvania State Police, and all investigating authorities any aid or counsel that they might need or desire. With that, I will turn it back over to the District Attorney.
Thank you, Bill. At this point, I'm going to introduce Chief Glenn Dorney.
Thank you, Jim. Today's a sad day for the South Whitehall Township Police Department and the entire law enforcement community. It is also a message to our community that as police officers, we are held accountable for our actions. This tragic incident is a reminder that split-second decisions can have grave consequences. I want to commend the Pennsylvania State Police and the Lehigh County Homicide Task Force for conducting a thorough and unbiased investigation. I also want to thank District Attorney Martin for his unbiased review of the facts of this case. I know this decision does not bring closure to Mr. Joseph Santos' family, but it may help gain some. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family. My thoughts and prayers also go out to Jonathan Roselli and his family. This is an extremely trying time for him and has affected him dearly. Knowing Jonathan as I do, he is a man of honor and integrity and a good person to the core. This incident does not change that. As DA Martin stated, there was no malice in this incident. The facts, and only the facts of this case, have dictated the outcome of the investigation. The South Whitehall Township Police Department continues to provide dedicated service to our community. I stand before you as the Chief of Police with confidence in the men and women of my department. This unfortunate and isolated incident will not change that confidence. The internal investigation is ongoing, and the personnel aspect will not be discussed at this time. I want to thank our community for their patience and support during this trying time. This is certainly not the end of this process, and we will need that ongoing support moving forward. Rest assured that the men and the women of the South Whitehall Township Police Department will continue to serve the community with dignity and integrity. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Ladies and gentlemen, with the caveat that there may be things that we're not able to answer because of the pendency of the criminal action, as I previously indicated, we will take questions.
Was there anything that Mr. Santos was saying to the officer or to other people that he encountered?
We believe in one instance, and with respect to one or several people that he encountered before the officer encountered him, he was asking for help. There are some things that are not audible at the present time on the dash cam video and the body cam video, and I'm not sure that we'll ever be able to enhance them, but we're attempting to do so.
Has Officer Roselli been terminated?
Pardon me?
Has the officer been terminated?
I believe he's still on administrative leave, but
Yeah, it's still an ongoing investigation for the personnel aspect, and he has, of course, an opportunity to defend himself. We have not interviewed him based on this incident because we wanted the Pennsylvania State Police and Homicide Task Force to have the first crack at interviewing him and not impede with the investigation at all.
So when will that happen, after this process?
Yes.
So is there a possibility he could keep his job?
We're
Now,
not,
you want to come over here?
we're really not in a position to discuss the personnel aspect of it right now. It's, I mean, I think we know the facts, and, but he does have due process to his privilege to be employed, so we'll leave it at that.
So should this go to trial, he would then, you know, whether there's a verdict or not, he would then go through a process with you which would determine whether he continues to
The
hold his job.
process will be completed long before that.
Long before that?
Yes.
I mean, can you just go over that one
It's-
more time,
it's
how
ongoing.
the process works?
The process is ongoing right now.
All right, thank you all for attending. Appreciate it.